point at which the affirming team lost today's debate is when they try to come out and tell you that the current MMP system that we see under New Zealand is broken, that the speed at which legislation is pumped out of New Zealand Parliament is at a rate at which it is irresponsible because it doesn't consider the many effects it would have on the country. This is simply not true, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think anyone in this room would think that New Zealand has a problem with coming out with irresponsible legislation. In fact, we see that currently there is a lot of debate and a lot of discourse around the many bills that are going through Parliament, and we see and under the MMP system. So we don't buy the fact that MMP is currently broken. In fact, we think it's working perfectly well, and we say that under MMP would not be able to exist without the existence of political parties. And because MMP is such a good system and it requires the existence of political parties, we are the team that stands for MMP, we are the team that stands for political parties, and we are the team that stands for the current efficient and well-governed government of New Zealand currently has. All right, Madam Adjudicator, 3 points of clash for you in today's debate. Firstly, are parties a legitimate form of representation? Secondly, what side of the House gets better policy through faster? And thirdly, which side of the House gets better political engagement? So, onto this first one of clash, which is, are parties a legitimate form of representation? And here, we on the negating side came out and told you that what a political party represents, the ideology and the worldview, it is something that is a legitimate part and a very important part of an individual's political identity, and something that's worth being represented in Parliament. And here, the affirming team came out and accepted this. So we say principally we think we are justified in having parties because it protects this element of representation, which we would get off if we banned it. Furthermore, we've also told you down the line that MMP is very good for representation, because under their side of the house, ladies and gentlemen, if we had first past the post in every single electorate, there could be the potential for thousands and thousands of people to be misrepresented. When in a single electorate, you only need to win a plurality, there's a potential that 50, 60, or 70% of the local electorate won't be represented because if there are multiple candidates, the winning MP may only need, say, 30% of the vote to be elected, right? And here we can see huge levels of misrepresentation, which we find is unacceptable, right? So under the MMP system, because there is a party vote as well as an electoral vote, we see far better levels of representation compared to say the United Kingdom, where everything's first past the post. So because MMP and the existence of the party vote and and political parties in general helps with this representation, it is essential that we maintain political parties for the sake of representation. All right, moving on to my second point of clash, which is which side of the House gets better policy through faster. So what we tell you is that in the affirming team's world, there will be 120 voices in Parliament, all squabbling over a piece of legislation. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is not an environment which is conducive to forming a consensus. We told you that parties, by having a manifesto, it's easy, it sort of delineates what the platform of the party is, and it's really easy to be able to build consent, to find support for a party and bill. And so the response that we heard from the affirming team is that okay, if parties can have manifestos, then why not individuals? And to this, we say that okay, sure, all right, let's take a look at the world would look like if all MPs, if there were 120 manifestos in Parliament, right? Okay, so that means that each MP would need to go out and talk to all 119 other MPs and read through their manifesto and understand their political position. And this is not a simple process, ladies and gentlemen. It would take them a long time to understand all the complexities and nuances of the position. And you times that by 119, and just think about it, ladies and gentlemen. How long would that take? This is so inefficient. It would be incredibly difficult to build any sort of consensus. And this issue is further compounded by the fact that MPs might not stick around. They might leave after the next election, and then when they leave, MPs have to go through that entire process again of understanding where their other colleagues stand on the spectrum, and having to build that consensus again, right? So we will see an incredible inefficiency under their side of the House. And our second point that we brought to you is that by having 120 independent local MPs, we would also see issues of national significance being neglected. Now, why is this the case? It's because when MPs are only voted in, when they're only held accountable to their local electorate, that those are the only people that hold them accountable, and their only incentive is to help these sorts of people. And what this will mean is that this debate will be obstructed, this will come at the expense of debating issues of national significance. Furthermore, it would also block important infrastructure projects from being green-lighted in Parliament, right? Because the rest of the country would see this. It's like an opportunity cost, right? If money goes here to build an infrastructure project in, say, Whangarei, right? That's necessarily money that can't be spent on another part of the country, like, say, Nelson, right? So what we would effectively see is that MPs would block infrastructure projects because that money can't go to their local community, and we wouldn't see important infrastructure projects built throughout the country, like, say, the Auckland Harbour Bridge, or public transport funding, or subsidies for things that only affect the rural community, right? We will see a really big stonewalling of important projects. All right, so that is why we would, and at this point, we're proving to you, the speed at which legislation passes is just incredibly slow, right? And at the point where there's so much debate, but nothing actually gets passed, we say that this is the point where democracy is broken, because government doesn't function, because it can't pass any legislation to actually enact the will of the people. And so this is why, under this side of the House, we will find it unacceptable. I'll take a point of information from that one now.
Do you think it's really legitimate that an MP is likely to stop wide-scale gun reform in favour of building a bridge in Mount Eden?
So we think on particular issues like gun reform in light of the Christchurch attacks, we think it would pass. But for other things, sure, that's one part, but infrastructure is also a very important part of what the government does, right? And we think that will be blocked. So even if we do get occasional consensus around a single issue, this is by far the vast minority of cases. All right, and why we get better, all right. So moving on to my third point of clash, which is which side of the House will get better political engagement. And what the affirming trying to tell you is that it'll be fine if all MPs focus on local issues, they'll get more people engaged. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not the case. They try to tell us people care about local issues, but let's look at the turnout in local elections, right? No one turns up. There is no voter turnout in local elections. So it's simply absurd that the affirming team comes out here and tries to tell you that by focusing on local issues, they get more people engaged, when this is actually not going to happen ever, because people don't show up for local elections. So we don't see why this would translate into national MPs. Furthermore, we tell you that parties, by having a manifesto and being associated with a party, people understand on an instinctive level what they represent, so it's really easy and lowers barriers for them to understand what MPs represent. So at the end of this debate, we've shown you why parties are a legitimate form of representation. We've told you why under their side of the House they get no legislation through, and why we get more policy, more and better policy, and why we get better political engagement on our side of the House. And that is why we have won today's debate.